الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه وبعد. أهلا وسهلا بكم أيها الإخوة في درس 17 من سلسلة دروسنا في علم العقيدة، في علم التوحيد، من خلال متن درة البيان في أصول الإيمان لفضيلة الشيخ الدكتور محمد يسري إبراهيم حفظه الله تعالى. Welcome, brothers, to our 17th lesson from our series of lessons in the science of Aqeedah, the science of Tawheed, going through the book, the text, Durratul Bayan fi Usul al-Iman, written by Dr. Sheikh Muhammad Yusri Ibrahim. May Allah preserve him. And without further ado, we will start the lesson. In the last lesson, we spoke about Tawheed al-Rububiyyah, Tawheed of Allah's Lordship, and what does that mean, and what does that imply, and what does that include. And we spoke about Tawheed of Allah's names, Tawheed of Allah's names and attributes as an introduction to that branch of Tawheed. And that was to encompass the Tawheed of beliefs that we hold in our heart, or the Tawheed al-Ilmi al-Khabari. And this is the second part of talking about the Tawheed of Allah's names and attributes, and providing us with principles for belief in Allah's names and attributes that we can follow for the understanding and for our belief in Allah's names and attributes. So the Shaykh says, قواعد الإيمان بأسماء الحسنى, principles for the belief in Allah's beautiful names. So firstly, we're going to do real principles that we need to know concerning the names of Allah Azza wa Jal, and then later on we will deal with principles to do with the attributes of Allah Azza wa Jal. So the Shaykh says, Asma'ullahi kulluha husna, سواء انفردت أو اقترنت أو تضايفت. He says all the names of Allah are beautiful, and this is the principle, that all of Allah's names are beautiful, and they have reached the pinnacle of beauty, and they are at the pinnacle of beauty and the pinnacle of perfection. That's what we mean by husna. They're all of them are at the pinnacle of beauty and the pinnacle of perfection, whether they are singular, whether they are coupled, whether they are combined. However they come to us, in whichever case they are, whether they come to us singularly, they come to us coupled with other names, or they come to us combined or associated with other names or with other qualities. They are all husna, they are all at the pinnacle of beauty. Then the Shaykh says, وَالْإِيمَانُ بِأَسْمَائِهِ تَعَالَى يَتَضَمَّنُ ثَلَاثَةَ أُمُورٍ. الإيمان بالاسم وما دل عليه من معان وما يقتضيه من آثار. فمثلا يؤمن بأنه عليم وذو علم محيط وأنه يدبر الأمر وفق علمه جل وعلا. Then the Shaykh mentions belief in his names. The Most High includes three matters, includes three things. So belief in Allah's names is based upon or encompasses three issues. First is belief in the name. Secondly, it's belief in the meanings it indicates and it infers and it leads to. And thirdly, belief in the effects that it produces, the effects that it has in the creation. So these three are, or the belief in the effects it requires or it produces. So these are the three matters that we must believe in to believe in Allah's names. So then the Sheikh gives the example. For example, belief in the name of all-knowing, Al-Alim, is belief that he possesses encompassing knowledge, and that he organizes matters according to his knowledge. So we believe in the name that he's Al-Alim, and we believe in the meaning that he possesses encompassing knowledge, and we believe in that which the effects that it produces, which is that he organizes the matters according to his knowledge. That's the effect of the name Al-Alim, or that's what it produces, or that which is what it requires of effect, that he organizes matters according to his knowledge. Then the Sheikh says, وَأَسْمَاءُ رَبِّنَا تَعَالَى تَوْقِيفِيَّةٌ جَاءَتْ بِهَا أَدِلَّةٌ وَفِيَّةٌ وأسماء الله تعالى تدل على العلمية والوصفية أعلام مترادفة وأوصاف متباينة. And the names of our Lord, the Most High, are textual with ample evidence in the text. So this is another principle that we have, that the names of Allah are all textual. They all come to us mentioned in the book or in the Sunnah. And the names of Allah Almighty denote nouns and descriptions. So they are nouns which refer to one being, which is Allah Azza wa Jal. And they are descriptions describing that being, Jalla wa Ala. They are synonymous in the being, meaning all of these names refer to Allah Azza wa Jal, who is one. All of these names, no matter how many they are, they all refer to Allah Azza wa Jal. Allah is Ar-Rahman, Allah is Ar-Rahim, Allah is Al-Malik, Allah is Al-Aziz, Allah is Al-Kareem, Allah is Al-Jawad, Al-Ra'uf, Al-Rahim. All of these names are names for one being, and that is Allah Azza wa Jal. So in one sense, they are synonymous, in the sense that they refer to one being. So in that sense, they are synonymous. But because they are descriptions, each one has a different meaning than the other one. So from that sense, they are not, from that sense that they have different meanings, they are different. So he says they are synonymous in the being and different in descriptions. وكما أن أسماءه تعالى تدل على صفاته فهي مشتقة من بعض صفاته. Just as his names, the Most High, denote his attributes. So they indicate from his names, we understand some of his attributes. At the same time, they are derived from some of his attributes. They are derived from his attributes. They denote and indicate his attributes. And at the same time, they are derived from his attributes. And we will see an example. We have the two names, Ar-Rahman, Ar-Rahim. Both of them denote, Ar-Rahman and Ar-Rahim denote the attribute of Rahmah, Sifatul Rahmah. And they are derived from the attribute of Rahmah. But Ar-Rahman is the attribute of his essence. So Ar-Rahman is part and parcel of him, Jalla wa Ala. He is always Ar-Rahman. And Ar-Rahman is his sifa of essence, of his that. It's an overflowing mercy. Whereas the difference with Ar-Rahim, they say, is Ar-Rahim is an attribute of action, that he is Rahim to his slaves, Rahim to his to the believers. So he's Rahim towards them at the times they are in need of it. So it's an action which comes about, it's an attribute that comes about when Allah wills. Whereas this is a constant, it's a sifa dhatiyya, is an attribute which is part of his essence. whereas this is part of his actions. And we will deal with that in more detail later when we talk about Allah's action, Allah's attributes. Jalla wa ala. Then the Shaykh says, ولا تنحصر عدتها في 99 ولا يحصيها عد العادين. The Shaykh says they are not limited in number to 99 and enumerators cannot count them. So he says, as we saw in the hadith of Ibn Mas'ud, Dua of Ibn Mas'ud, the names which Allah has hidden. In the dua, we are asked to say, and by the names that Allah has hidden and kept secret from us, that they are not limited. This shows that they are not limited 99. And the enumerator, the one who tries to count them, all of them, cannot count them. It's impossible. وأسماؤه تعالى كلها فاضلة لكنها على التحقيق متفاضلة. His names, the Most High, are all virtuous, but they are of differing levels of virtue. Just like his speech, all of his speech, the Quran, all of it is virtuous. All of it is virtuous. But some of it is better than other of it. The best verse of the Quran, or the most virtuous verse of the Quran, is Ayatul Kursi. And the greatest surah of the Quran is Surah Al-Fatiha. So in the same way, Allah's names, they're all virtuous, but some of them are higher, of a higher virtue than others. ولا يخرج من أسماء الله ما تقارب معناه إذا اختلف مبناه. Names with similar meanings but different structures are not considered to be from them. So sometimes we may have synonyms to Allah's names, but the structure of the noun is different from the structure of the name of Allah Azza wa Jal. And as the names of Allah are textual, as they are mentioned in the text, so any names which are similar to them but are different in their structure are not considered to be the names of Allah Azza wa Jal, even though they may have the similar meaning. And that's based upon the principle that all of Allah's names are tawqifiyya, are textual. So issues connected to Allah's names. It has been mentioned in the Quran, actions associated with Allah Almighty Himself for the purpose of reward and justice. They have been used in the context of praise and perfection, but one should not derive from them names for the Almighty, and they should not be mentioned out of the context in which they were mentioned. And this becomes clearer with an example. For example, Allah says, when talking about the disbelievers and how they mock Allah, and in return, as justice towards them, Allah says, Allah yastahzi'u bihim. Allah mocks them. It is Allah who mocks them. Because they mock Allah, Allah mocks them back. But this is in the context of countering their actions. So one cannot derive from this a name for Allah as being a mocker, as it indicates a deficiency. A mocker, without the context, it describes deficiency to Allah Azza wa Jal. But in the context, it is praiseworthy and perfection. Another point that we must note about the names of Allah Azza wa Jal is some names of Allah are only used coupled with their opposite. So they cannot be used singularly by themselves, but they are used coupled with their opposite. And coupling them with their opposite gives them perfection. And leaving them singular indicates deficiency. So if used alone, they imply deficiency. For example, Allah says, Al-Mu'ti al-Mani, Al-Dar al-Nafi, Wal-Qabid al-Basit, Wal-Mu'izz al-Mudhil. The giver and the preventer. So Al-Mu'ti by itself, Al-Mani by itself, implies deficiency, the one who prevents. But when given with its opposite, Al-Mu'ti, the giver and the preventer, then that's perfection. The harmer and the benefiter. Ad-Dar, just to call him Ad-Dar, the harmer, implies deficiency. But to say Ad-Dar al-Nafi, the harmer and the benefiter, implies perfection. The stretcher out and the holder back. Wal-Qabid wal-Basit. Wal-Qabid al-Basit. And Wal-Mu'izz al-Mudhil, the honor and the humiliator. By themselves, they may imply deficiency, but coupled with their opposite, they imply perfection. So they are only used in couplet form. Another issue connected to Allah's names. What is the meaning in the hadith of Abu Hurairah? The one who enumerates them. Al-Bukhari said, and Al-Bukhari and others said, the one who memorizes them, enumerates them here means the one who memorizes them, as comes in another version of the hadith, and hence it is its explanation. Al-Khattabi said, there's many angles. The first of them, the one who enumerates them, meaning counts them all in their entirety, meaning one does not suffice with some of them. Hence one calls upon Allah by all of them and praises Allah using all of them. Hence one will be deserving the promise of reward. So he calls upon Allah by all of them. He praises Allah by all of them. And by doing that, he will be deserving the promise of reward from Allah Azza wa Jal. Also, the second angle, he says, the one who enumerates means ability. Here, enumerate means ability. The one who is able to fulfill their rights and act according to what they necessitate. Hence, one says the provider. So the one who says Allah is Ar-Razaq, the provider, he trusts that the provision is in Allah's hand, and so on. So he believes in the names and he gives each name its rights and acts according to what those names necessitate. The third angle, the one who enumerates them, encompasses them. It is also said the one who acts according to them, e.g., all hearing and all seeing, what servitude one perceives from these names. So he gives Allah the ubudiyya, the worship that these names deserve. So he enumerates them, meaning he worships Allah through those names in the way that these names necessitate his worship. And Allah knows best. These are what Al-Khattabi mentions of the angles and what Al-Bukhari has mentioned. And Allah knows best what is meant by he who enumerates the names. Then the Shaykh says, وَالْإِلْحَادُ فِيهَا يَكُونُ بإنكارها بعد ثبوتها أو إنكار ما دلت عليه وبابتداع في اشتقاقاتها وإنشائها أو بتشبيهها بأسماء المخلوقين وصفاتهم. قال تعالى, straying from them is by denying them after they have been proven, or by denying what they indicate, and by innovating in their derivations and construction, or by likening them to the names and attributes of creation. So all of this is ilhad, and Allah has warned against ilhad. The Almighty has said, وَلِلَّهِ الْأَسْمَاءُ الْحُسْنَى فَادْعُوهُ بِهَا وَذَرُوا الَّذِينَ يُلْحِدُونَ فِي أَسْمَاءِهِ سَيُجْزَوْنَ مَا كَانُوا يَعْمَلُونَ. To Allah belong the best names, so supplicate him by them, and abandon those who commit sacrilege, who make ilhad, who stray from his names. Soon they will be requited for what they used to do. Those were the principles that we needed to know with regards to belief in Allah's names. Now we'll move on to principles that we need to know with regards to Allah's lofty attributes. So the Shaykh says, قواعد الإيمان بصفات العلا. principles for faith in the lofty attributes. The Shaykh says, Sifatullahi uliya kulluha, thana'un kulluha, kamalun kulluha, tawqifiyatun kulluha. The attributes of Allah are all lofty, all praiseworthy, all perfection, all textual. They all come from the text. We don't invent them, but we take them from the speech of Allah and the speech of His Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam. وباب الصفات, the Shaykh says, وباب الصفات أوسع من باب الأسماء وأوسع منها باب الإخبار وأفعاله تعالى صادرة عن أسمائه وصفاته جل وعلا. Then he says the chapter of attributes is broader than the chapter of names and is wider than, and the chapter of informing about Allah is wider than the chapter of His attributes. In addition, His actions, the exalted, all emanate from His names and attributes. So the chapter of attributes is broader than the chapter of names. So there are more attributes of Allah Azza wa Jal than there are names. There are more characteristics for Allah Azza wa Jal and qualities for Allah Azza wa Jal than there are names that we know of. And it is wider, and wider than it is the chapter of informing about Allah. So informing about Allah is wider and is broader than than the attributes of Allah Azza wa Jal. So we can use terms and we use words which are non-textual to describe, to inform about Allah Azza wa Jal, as long as we don't consider them to be attributes and we don't consider them to be names. So the smallest category is the names. They are all textual and they're all restricted to the text. Attributes are broader, meaning there are more attributes than there are names. Not for every attribute there is a name, but every name is derived from an attribute. So attributes are greater, are broader in number, are more found in number than the names. As for informing about Allah, then that is even broader, meaning we can use non-textual words to inform about Allah as long as they are correct words, and as long as we don't regard them to be attributes or names. For example, we can say Allah is shay. Allah is something, is a thing. Allah is sani. Allah is the maker. As we can use that word as informing about Allah Azza wa Jal, but we know as-sani is not from the names of Allah and is not from the attributes of Allah. But it is a way of informing about Allah, like shay, like mawjood. And then the Shaykh says, in addition, وَأَفْعَالُهُ تَعَالَى صَادِرَةٌ عَنْ أَسْمَائِهِ وَصِفَاتِهِ. His actions, Allah Ta'ala's actions, emanate from His names and attributes. The way Allah acts is based upon His names and attributes. Jalla wa ala. Then the Shaykh says, وَلَا يُحِيطُ بِالصِّفَاتِ أَحَدٌ وَلَا يُحِيطُ بِالصِّفَاتِ أَحَدٌ وَلَا يَأْتِي عَلَيْهَا عَدٌّ وَهِيَ مُتَفَاضِلَةٌ تفاضلا لا يستلزم نقصا وتفسير بعضها ببعض لا يستلزم تماثلا. The Shaykh says, His attributes cannot be encompassed by anyone. cannot be encompassed in number by anyone, and it is impossible for them to be enumerated. They are of different levels, just like his names, but in ways that do not necessitate deficiency. Explaining some of them with the wording of other of them does not necessitate similarity. Sometimes to explain one attribute, we may use another attribute, but that doesn't mean that both attributes are the same, are exactly the same. There's always a difference between them. But sometimes to bring the meaning closer to our, to bring the meaning to to be able to conceptualize it, sometimes we need another attribute to explain it. But that doesn't imply that they are the same. والصفات منها ثبوتية ومنها سلبية أو منفية وثبوتية منها ذاتية وفعلية وهي مدح وكمالات. So this is a difficult sentence here for us to conceptualize, but the next slide will make it clearer. The attributes include affirmative ones, meaning those from the attributes are attributes which we affirm about Allah Azza wa Jal, that attributes which Allah possess. And there are attributes which are negative or negated, attributes which we negate with regards to Allah Azza wa Jal. And as for those attributes that we affirm about Allah Azza wa Jal, then some of them are related to Allah's essence, to Allah's being, to Allah's self, and others which are related to Allah's actions. But in the end, all of them are praiseworthy and perfections, and not just praiseworthy, and not just perfection, but the pinnacle of perfection, the height of perfection, after which there is no perfection. And to explain this, we look at this this slide. So we have sifat. Allah has sifat, and these sifat are all praiseworthy and perfections. And they are of two types: thubuti, affirmative. So attributes that we affirm with regards to Allah Azza wa Jal, that Allah possesses. And from these are those which are related to Allah's being, related to Allah's being, such as Allah possesses the attribute of knowledge, and knowledge is related to Allah's being, it's part of Allah's being. And speech, we affirm for Allah's speech, and speech is related to Allah's that Allah possesses the ability to speak, and it's part of his that. But we also have from those names which we affirm, names which are attributes, not names, attributes which are related to actions. Allah speaks, that is dhati, but at the same time it's fi'li, it's an action related as well. Allah speaks when he wills, and he is silent when he wills, Jalla wa ala. And then we have the other side of attributes, those which are negative, or those which we negate, concerning Allah Azza wa Jal. And all of these negations also are affirmations of their opposite, which give us the praiseworthiness and the perfection. So we negate from Allah al-maut and an-nawm. So death and sleep, we negate from Allah Azza wa Jal this. And by negating this, we affirm for Allah al-qayyumiyya, self-sufficientness. And in that is praise and perfection. So this is our diagram with regards to Allah's sifat. Then the Shaykh says, وَالذَّاتِيَّ لَا, to explain to us what is dhati, what are essence-based attributes. الذاتية لا يتصور انفكاكها عن الذات أزلا ولا أبدا ويلزم عن نفيها نقص ولا تتعلق بالمشيئة والفعلية على خلاف ذلك. So the Shaykh says the essence-related attributes are those attributes which are impossible to be separated from the self at any time or ever. They're always part and parcel of the self, of the being, and it cannot be imagined that the being exists without them. And the negation necessitates a deficiency. By them being negated, then we attribute deficiency to the being, and they are not related to the divine will. They don't occur due to the will. As for the action related ones, then they are otherwise. Then they can be separated, and their negation does not necessitate the sufficiency, and they are not related, and they are related to the divine will. Then the Shaykh mentions some examples of the dhati. He says, وَالذَّاتِيُ مِنْهَا مَعْنَوِي كَالسَّمْعِ وَالْبَصْرِ وَالْقُدْرَةِ وَالْعِلْمِ ومنها خبري كالوجه واليدين والقدم والعين. So the Shaykh says the essence related attributes are some of them are meaning based, ma'nawi, are meaning based. From them are hearing, sight, ability, and knowledge. These are all meanings. Hearing, sight, ability, and knowledge. And among them are information based attributes, attributes that we only know because Allah has informed us about them, such as the face and the hands and the feet and the eye. These are attributes which are khabari, which we know from the text. Whereas dhati, ma'nawi, they are meaning based. They are meanings established for Allah Azza wa Jal. So we have dhati related to the essence. They are of two types, meaning based and information based. The meaning based from them are hearing, sight, ability, and knowledge. And the information based attributes are the face, the hands, the feet, and the eye, and etc. Then we have fi'li, related to actions. Actionally related attributes such as laughter and coming and descending and rising. These all occur when Allah wills them to occur. And at the time that Allah decides, Allah wills them to occur and intends them to occur. So these dhati, they are impossible to be separated from the self at any time or ever. And their negation necessitates a deficiency, and they are not related to the divine will. As for the action related ones, they are related to the divine will and can be separated from the self. So this explains the last slide. Then the Shaykh says, وَالْفِعْلِيُّ كَالضَّحِكِ وَالْمَجِيءِ وَالنُّزُولِ وَالْإِسْتِوَاءِ. We mentioned this in the last slide. The action-related attributes such as laughter and coming, descending, and rising. Above, وَالْمَنْفِي كَالْمَوْتِ وَالنَّوْمِ وَالنِّسْيَانِ وَالْعَجْزِ. As for those which are negated, attributes which are negated attributes such as death, sleep, forgetfulness, and disability, the opposite of them, each one of them is affirmed, which is where the perfection is. That in negating them, there's an affirmation of their opposite, and in the affirmation of their opposite is the perfection. وليس في المنفي ما منها كمال ولا مجه إلا بإثبات كمال أضدادها. This is exactly what I just said. There is no perfection or praise in the negated attributes except by affirming the perfection of its opposite. Then the Shaykh says, وطريقة الوحي في الصفات الإجمال عند النفي والتفصيل في الإثبات. The method of the revelation concerning the attributes is generality generality in negation and detail in affirmation. So when we negate in general terms, but when we affirm in detail. And then the Shaykh mentions some important principles. والقول في الصفات كالقول في الأسماء والقول في الصفات كالقول في الذات. This is a very important principle. That is, the position concerning the attributes is just like the position regarding the names. So we treat the attributes just as we treat the names, and the position concerning the attributes just like the position regarding the essence. We treat the attributes like we treat the that. So if somebody asks us, how is Allah's attribute of yad, attribute of hand, or attribute of face? We say we can only answer that if we know how Allah is. How is Allah's essence? So if we, just like we don't know, just like Allah has an essence, which is different, Allah has a self, which is different than all the other selves. We have a self. Allah has a self. The stars have a self, an essence. All of these are dhawat. Now Allah's that is separate and different and distinct and unique from all the other dhawat, all the other essences. So in the same way, Allah's attributes are different than all of the other attributes of creation. Just like Allah's that is different and unique and distinct, Allah's attributes are unique and distinct and different from the creation. So the position concerning the attributes is just like the position regarding the essence. Then the Shaykh gives us another principle. وَالْقَوْلُ فِي الْبَعْضِ الصِّفَاتِ كَالْقَوْلِ فِي الْبَاقِيَاتِ. The position concerning some of the attributes is just like the position regarding the rest. And this is for those who affirm, those people who affirm some attributes and deny other attributes. So if they affirm, for example, there are some people who affirm Allah's knowledge and Allah's knowledge, Allah's will, Allah's power, Allah's speech, Allah's hearing, Allah's seeing. They affirm 7 attributes or 8 attributes. So we say to them, just like as they deny the attributes of Allah's actions. So when it's said to them, when they say to us, why do you affirm? How does Allah make istiwa? How does Allah rise above? And this is an attribute of action. We say, just like Allah has knowledge, Allah has speech, Allah has hearing, Allah has life, Allah has will, and all of these attributes and we have life, and we have will, and we have intent, and we have speech, and we have existence. However, the attributes with regard to creation are totally different than the attributes of Allah Azza wa Jal. Just like Allah can have these attributes, and they are distinct, and they are not similar to that of the creation, knowledge and speech and seeing and hearing and intent and will. Then in the same way, Allah can have attributes of istiwa, actional attributes, which are distinct and are not similar and do not resemble the attributes of the creation. So the position concerning some of the attributes is just like the position regarding the rest. You cannot differentiate between the attributes. You cannot affirm a set of attributes and deny another group of attributes. You have to behave and have to deal with all the attributes in the same way. If you affirm some attributes, then you must affirm all the rest of the attributes. And if you deny some attributes, then you must deny all of the attributes. You can't have it both ways. But you must deal with all the attributes in the same way. Then the Shaykh moves on and says, وَالِاشْتِرَاكُ فِي الْأَسْمَاءِ وَالصِّفَاتِ لَا يَسْتَلْزِمُ تَمَاثُلُ الْمُسَمَّيَاتِ والموصوفات. Similarity in word nouns and adjectives. Similarity in the wording. Similarity in the between our attributes of the similarity in the words between the attributes that belong to the creation and the attributes that belong to Allah Azza wa Jal, and the adjectives and the descriptions does not imply the sameness of the nouns as the descriptors. So just because we have similar words that are used for our attributes and for our names does not imply that they are exactly the same with regards to us and to Allah Azza wa Jal. That's what he's saying. Similarity in use of the wording does not mean that they are the same in reality with regards to the creation and the creator. No. But that the similarity only there is in the wording. But in the reality, they are totally different. The attributes and the names connected to the creation are specific to the creation and are bound by the creation, are bound to the limits of the creation, whereas the attributes and the names connected to Allah Azza wa Jal are specific to Allah Azza wa Jal and are in a way that befit Allah's majesty, and none knows them except Allah Azza wa Jal, and none can know them except Allah Azza wa Jal, because none knows how Allah is. How Allah is. And if we were to know how Allah is, then we could know how His attributes are. But that knowledge of how Allah is, Allah has kept with Himself Jalla wa Ala, has not sent down to us in the revelation. وَلَيْسَ فِي الْأَقْلِيَاتِ مَا يُخَالِفُ مَنْهَجِ الْإِثْبَاتِ. And the Shaykh mentions an important point here. Okay? There's nothing in the rationale that opposes the method of affirmation. There is nothing in the intellect. There's no principles in our intellect that require us not to affirm what Allah has affirmed. Affirming Allah's names and attributes in a way that befits Allah's majesty does not oppose any intellectual proof or any fact, which is a fact, not a theory, but a fact. Affirming Allah's names and attributes does not oppose any fact or any rational proof. Whereas denying or affirming some and denying others goes against is contradictory, and there's holes in that approach, and we've seen some of them when we were speaking about them a minute ago. And the Sheikh says, والواجب في نصوص الصفات إجراؤها على ظاهرها اللائق بجلاله تعالى والمعلوم بمقتضى الخطاب والبيان وما يفهم من السياق. So the Sheikh gives us principle of how to understand Allah's attributes, or understand the text with regard the text concerning the attributes of Allah Azza wa Jal. So he says, what is obligatory concerning the text of the attributes is to accept them according to the apparent meaning. The apparent meaning of the language, but which befits Allah's majesty and is understood according to the discourse of the language and the address of the language. Also, what is inferred by the context. So we have that they must be taken according to the apparent meaning which befits Allah's majesty, and they must be understood according to the language which has been used, and according to the context in which they have come. So these 3 points. They must be understood according to the apparent meaning which befits Allah Azza wa Jal, and according to the language, and according to the context in which they have been mentioned. Then the Sheikh says, فأسماء والصفات إذا أضيفت إلى الرب اختصت به فكما تثبت له ذات لا كالذوات تثبت له أسماء وصفات لا يماثلها ما للمخلوق من أسماء أو صفات. This is what I've already said, but the Sheikh makes it clear again. Hence the names and attributes, if they are specified or associated with the Lord Jalla wa Ala, they become specific to him. And just as he has an essence which is affirmed for him, which is not like other entities, his that is not like the zawat of the creation. In the same way, his names and attributes are affirmed for him, which do not match the names or attributes of the creation. So just like he has a that, which is not like the zawat of the creation, he has sifat, which are not like the sifat of the creation, and he has asma, which are not like the asma of the creation. But just like his that is in a way that befits his majesty, Jalla wa Ala, and we do not know how it is. But we know the zawat of the makhluqeen. We know the zawat of the makhluqeen. We know the zawat of the creation. And their zawat, how they are, because we can see them and we can comprehend them. But Allah's that we do not see and we do not comprehend. So his that is not like the thats of the creation. In the same way, he has asma and he has sifat. And these asma and these sifat are in a way that befits his majesty. And they are not the same as the asma and the sifat of the creation. Just like his that is not the same as the that of the creation. Then the Shaykh says, وَكَمَا أَنَّ لَهُ تَعَالَى ذَاتًا عَلَى الْحَقِيقَةِ وَأَفْعَالًا عَلى الْحَقِيقَةِ فَكَذَلِكَ لَهُ صِفَاتٌ عَلى الْحَقِيقَةِ. Just as he, the exalted, has an essence in reality, has a that which is real. It's not a that which is imaginary. No, it's a that which is real. Just like the creation have a that which is real. The universe is a that, or everything in the universe is a zawat. Every object in the universe is a that. And these zawat are real. So Allah has a that which is real, because Allah exists and his existence is real. And he has actions which are real. He does actions which are real. Likewise, he has attributes which are real, because he is real, Jalla wa Ala. He is the obligatory existence, Jalla wa Ala. Then the Shaykh mentions وَالتَّفْوِيضُ عِنْدَ الْخَلَفِ يشمل المعاني الحقيقية وهو من البدع الردية إلا أن يقصد بها تفويض علم الكيفية. So he says the tafweed, which means delegation, delegating the meaning, or delegating the meaning to Allah Azza wa Jal, delegating the meaning of the attributes to Allah Azza wa Jal, and claiming that they don't mean the attributes and the wording that is used, the meaning of that in the language is not the meaning of it, but the true meaning is only known to Allah. The meaning of it, even linguistically, is only known to Allah Azza wa Jal. So the word has no linguistic meaning known to us, but that meaning is only known to Allah Azza wa Jal. That's what tafweed is. So he says the tafweed of the successors includes the delegation of the real meanings, and it is a bad innovation, unless what is intended by it is to delegate the knowledge of the how. So there's two types of tafweed: tafweed al-ma'ani and tafweed al-kayfiyya. Tafweed al-ma'ani is to negate or delegate the linguistic meaning of the word to Allah, and to claim that in the linguistically to us it has no meaning known to us. even though the language gives it a meaning, and Allah used it in that language, in that context, and we can understand the context and the meaning. But the tafweed of the meaning is to negate or delegate the linguistic meaning to Allah Azza wa Jal, and the real meaning to Allah Azza wa Jal, all meaning to Allah Azza wa Jal, and say we do not understand from them except words. And then there's the second form of tafweed, which is tafweed of the kayfiyah, delegating the kayfiyah, not knowing how, understanding the meaning of the word, but not understanding how it is with regards to Allah Azza wa Jal. With regards to the how, tafweed of the how, that is what we agree with. But we do not agree, and the innovation and the bad innovation is the tafweed of the meaning. Then the Shaykh says, وَمَذْهَبُ أَهْلِ السُنَّةِ فِي الصِّفَاتِ وَسَطٌ بَيْنَ فِرَقِ أَهْلِ الْقِبْلَةِ إثبات بلا تمثيل وتنزيه بلا تعطيل إذ كل ممثل معطل وهو كمن يعبد صنما وكل معطل ممثل وهو كمن يعبد عدما. Then the Shaykh says the doctrine of Ahl Sunnah, or the position of Ahl Sunnah concerning the attributes, is the middle path. Just as Allah has made this ummah, the middle ummah, the just ummah amongst all of the other nations, Ahl Sunnah is the middle path between all the sects and the people of the Qibla, all the sects of the people of the Qibla. So they affirm without representation, ithbat without similitude to the creation, and purification without obstruction. Purification, freeing Allah of deficiencies without negating, without denial of the attributes. So they free Allah of all deficiencies without denial of Allah's attributes. For everyone who makes a representation of Allah to his creation is in fact a denier, has actually denied the real, has actually denied the attributes, because he has made them similar to the creation. He is just like the one who worships an idol. And every denier is in fact one who makes a representation. He is just like one who worships nothing. So every mumathil mu'attil. وَهُوَ كَمَنْ يَعْبُدُ الصَّنَمًا. So everyone who makes Allah similar to creation actually has denied the attributes of Allah Azza wa Jal, has caused denial, and has made Allah into an idol. And every denier of Allah's names and attributes is a mumathil, is somebody who makes Allah similar to creation, and that creation is nothing. So when he denies the attributes, something which has no attributes is nothing. So he ends up worshipping nothing, and Allah knows best. And then the Shaykh says, وَالتَّكْذِيبُ بِالصِّفَاتِ كُفْرٌ وَإِثْبَاتُ التَّشْبِيهِ وَالتَّمْثِيلُ بِالْمَخْلُوقِينَ كُفْرٌ. So denying the attributes is disbelief, and affirming similarness to the creation and imitating the created being is also disbelief. So disbelief is from two angles. Disbelief can be in denying Allah's attributes, denying what Allah has affirmed for himself, or what the Messenger of Allah ﷺ has affirmed. In that denial is kufr. And also it can be if you affirm, but affirm in a way where you resemble Allah to the creation. That also is disbelief. And iman is in the middle between the two. It's affirmation without resemblance. That is iman. Then the Shaykh says, وَالتَّعْوِيلُ الْخَلَفِ مَظَنَّةُ التَّلَفِ وَلَا يُقْبَلُ إِلَّا لِظَاهِرٍ خَالَفَ السَّائِرَ الْمَنْقُولَاتِ فَيُفَسَّرُ بِمَا يُوَافِقُهَا. The interpretation of the successors, the ta'wil of the khalaf, is assuming corruption, and it is not accepted except in the case of an apparent meaning which differs from all other texts. So it is interpreted in a way that agrees with them. So these interpretations that some people have come up with to interpret away what they saw as resemblance to the creation, wordings of sifat or asma, which they saw in them similitude to the creation. So they use interpretations to get around them. These interpretations have not been affirmed by the Sharia, have not been affirmed by Allah, His Messenger. So they are mazanna. They are a place where we assume that there is the possibility of corruption, because no two people will interpret it in the same way, and that's why we have many different interpretations for one sifat. So they are assumption because there's no guarantee that the interpretation is correct, because there's no text to back up one's interpretation. The only time when an interpretation is valid is when the text requires it, because it is a sole text which goes against the rest of the texts. And so the interpretation is required to harmonize that particular text with the rest of the texts. Then the interpretation can be acceptable. Otherwise, interpretation is rejected. So we're not saying that all interpretations are rejected, but the interpretation, ta'wil, has its place. But its place is to harmonize a text with the rest of the texts, and not other than that. And then the Shaykh says, وَاعْتِمَادُ تَأْوِيلِ الصِّفَاتِ كَأَصْلٍ بِدْعِيَّةٌ كُلِّيَّةٌ وَتَأْوِيلُ بَعْضُهَا زَلَّةٌ عِلْمِيَّةٌ تُرَدُّ عَلَى قَائِلِهَا وَلَا تُهْدَرُ مَكَانَتُهُ بِسَبَبِهَا. And this is a very important point that we have mentioned in previous lessons, and that is adopting interpretation of the attributes as an original, as a primary principle, is an absolute heresy, is a heresy which takes one outside of the fold of Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah. It's a primary principle. And so to adopt interpretation, ta'wil of sifat, as your primary principle, then that takes one outside of the fold of Ahl Sunnah. Whereas interpretation of some of the attributes is an academic slip, is a mistake, which will be refuted, which will be refuted, which one can talk about and discuss, and will be rebutted upon the one who says it. However, his position, his nobility, his position will not be lost because of it. We will not take away from him because he made a mistake in a particular attribute. He interpreted it away. As long as it's not his primary principle, meaning interpreted that way, is his primary principle with regards to the attributes. With that, we come to the end of our lesson today. وصلى الله على نبينا محمد والله أعلم.